So over the past few months, I've started to talk more about bows. One of the odd things about working with musical instruments, with string instruments, is there's a tendency, particularly from the public point of view, to see violins as being complete in themselves. We don't talk much about these amazing instruments. And this bow I'm holding in my hands really sort of sums up the mistake of that. The minute that I picked up this bow this morning, it's the first time I've ever played this and put it onto my normal violin, that Brothers Amati violin, the Girolamo Amati violin you just heard there. The violin sounded completely different. So the first obvious thing to say, which should be obvious, but we don't say it enough, is that a bow can fundamentally change the sound of a violin. And isn't it weird that everyone assumes this won't be the case, that somehow a bow is just something which activates a violin? And if you're going to define the difference between what happens with this bow when I play a violin is, in the case of the Amati, it made the sound darker, more compact, more focused. Malene said more interior kind of sound. From a physical point of view, what's really interesting about it is that the bow is very much weighted towards the tip, which means that you get a lot of very interesting expressive qualities there. So there's an intersect between the acoustic result of something and the physical experience of playing a bow like this. Now those are, if you like, are the very, very small, tiny, almost rather shallow aspects of it. I'll get in a minute to why this bow in particular is exciting. Some things about this bow which have been changed. This bow is a Voirin, so this is a late 19th century bow, the kind of the generation after the Tourte family. It's got changes which were made to the instrument in the 20th century, such as this thumb band here. So when the bow was made, it wouldn't have had this piece of what is actually snake skin here, which means that the thumb is just held in one place, and you can see how it's been worn away. I suspect this thumb band was probably put on some point in the 1930s or 40s. Certainly no one's put a snakeskin thumb band on an instrument in the past 30 or 40 years. But then we have the next thing about an instrument like this, is that this is associated with a very particular violinist who's associated with the great composer. This is the instrument which was played by the violinist Samuel Dushkin, who was a pupil of Fritz Kreisler, which should be enough to get us excited in the first place. But for violinists, what's really extraordinary is that he collaborated from 1930 with Igor Stravinsky, not only in writing new works, such as the great violin concertos. Stravinsky's violin concerto was written for, and I say these words carefully, with him, but also because Stravinsky started touring as a pianist in the decade and a half before the Second World War. He worked up a complete recital program with Dushkin of a combination of original works for piano and violin, such as the great Duo Concertante, and arrangements of orchestral pieces so they could play a whole program, such as his arrangement, which was the second arrangement he'd made for violin of movements from Pulcinella, arranged as Suite Italienne, and most his arrangements of Tchaikovsky as a ballet, which was as a ballet was the La Baiser de Fée, the Fairest Kiss, and then became an orchestral piece, Divertimento, which he then made into a violin piece. And what's interesting with a collaboration like this is you have to ask the question, how much is Stravinsky and how much is Dushkin? And what I just played you there was Dushkin's arrangement of a Jewish melody written by Paul Kirman. And as you can see, he was, every fingering I played was, and every bowing I played was the bowing and fingering that he indicated. And it pulls out very particular things from the two instruments. If I just focus on bowing, not fingering, you'll notice that it did things like this, with dots and then sometimes with lines. So what's particular about this bow is to be one small particular thing, is it's very articulate here. Got lots of different soft consonants in this part of the bow. And to be very detailed about it, you could argue that not only is Stravinsky collaborating with Dushkin, he's collaborating with what Dushkin's instruments did naturally. An example of something which was written and arranged on this bow would be Stravinsky and Dushkin's arrangement of the thing called Chanson, which is from an early piece called Mavra, which actually functions in a rather similar way. It's this kind of thing. So all of this, of course, you can't do that without thinking of Dushkin's teacher, Kreisler, where you had the... And if I think about Kreisler's bows, which I happen to know very well because there are two of them in the Library of Congress, he played British bows. He had two bows made. Of course, they would have been probably made by the great British maker Retford, but they were made under the Hill imprint. And he extended his bows here with a piece of fillet of wood so that the hair length was about 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch longer, which made the bow do exactly what this bow does, which is to be more weighted and more articulate at this end of the stick. So this is a bow. It doesn't surprise me that a pupil of Kreisler would want a bow that functions like this. And it completely changes the sound of an instrument. The bow is the heart of string playing. And so it's wonderful to hold exquisite object like this, which is so much a player's instrument, which can teach us all of that.